Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trylko from the Sons of UCF, joined by Eric Lopez of the Black and Gold Banneret. Welcome to Around the Kingdom. Elo, haven't seen you in a while. Hello.
Hello, Trace. You look, well, the same. Welcome to the fastest UCF show. I think it's still the fastest UCF show. Coming up, we'll talk UCF guys getting drafted in the NFL draft. What do we think they will do? How will they fare? What is the football roster missing? Plus, there is some positive spring news. One team is going to the NCAAs. The other one is fighting to still make the Big 12 tournament. We'll break down all of that and much more coming up on this edition of Around the Kingdom. Still called that, right?
It is. Before we get going with all of that, Elo, let us welcome in the third member of our team. He is Adam Eaton from the Sons of UCF. Keeps an eye on the clock, keeps us on our toes. Adam, hello.
Speaking of calls, gentlemen, I'm going to make sure that you get no crank calls during the show. I don't want anyone bothering you, telling you got drafted by ESPN or something. So I'm going to make sure no crank calls get through.
All right. Good deal. We'll check back with Adam in a few. NFL draft comes and goes, and not a bad draft for the UCF Knights. RJ Harvey going to the Denver Broncos second round. Mac McWilliams to the Philadelphia Eagles in the fifth. And, of course, then the draft ends and a bunch of free agent signees. Elo, what do you make of this NFL draft from a UCF perspective?
I think it worked out better than people might have thought. I mean, I thought RJ might be a third-round pick. Instead, goes second round, goes to Denver, which it's not like they have an elite running back there, so there's opportunities for him. Now, I don't think it's a slam dunk like other people are saying. Everybody's all of a sudden thinking he's going to be a rookie of the year and a Pro Bowler, and let's hold off on the Canton, Ohio speech on RJ. But I do think he's got a good opportunity there to get some good touches there and be productive. And then for Mac, I think it's a good spot. The Philadelphia Eagles are arguably one of the best, if not the best organization in the NFL right now. They've been to 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. They've done a great job building their roster. It's arguably the best roster in the league. So you're going into a good organization. So I think it pretty much panned out well for both of them.
I mean, we were seeing RJ Harvey third, fourth, maybe fifth, even in some projection. Second, though, and that is one of the higher draft picks for the Knights. Just a little bit ahead of Kevin Smith even. That surprised me a little bit that he went so high. What do you make of Sean Payton, the Broncos coach, saying there's some Darren Sproles comparisons to be made with RJ Harvey?
I'm not the biggest Sean Payton fan. I think he's a little overrated. Like, he's still living off the Drew Brees Super Bowl. But listen, I think he's a bigger, much taller guy than Sproles. I don't think he's as fast as Sproles. But what it tells me is he's going to use him as a receiving back, which somehow he wasn't used here that much, some would argue, at UCF, Trace, for some reason.
Yes.
It wouldn't surprise me if RJ's more productive in the passing game than he ever was at UCF, which I'm sure Knight fans will accept that very well and not be wondering what the heck at all. Like you won't be wondering what the heck, right, Trace? You'll understand.
Sure. Now, of the free agent signees, who do you think may have the best opportunity of hanging onto a roster? You've got Kobe Hudson with Carolina, Ricky Barber and Jacoby Jones in Washington, Brandon Adams with Miami. No Jacksonville Jaguar as we record.
I know, you all joked about the Jags. It didn't happen. I like Kobe Hudson and Penny Boone because they're going to a team that has a terrible roster. There's nothing that stands out, especially at the wide receiving position at Carolina. They're looking for receivers to try to make Bryce Young be successful. So that could be a spot for either a Kobe Hudson or maybe even Penny Boone in the backfield to have a shot to be somewhat productive.
How about that Penny Boone? Not used very much at UCF.
Oh, I'm sure that'll come up. I can see it now when he gets more yards rushing with Carolina than he did at UCF. The jokes are ready, and we're ready for that. Hey, speaking of jokes, Dillon Gabriel got drafted. That's as big of a joke as it gets here. 3rd round pick to the Cleveland Browns. Shedeur Sanders gets picked by the same team a couple of rounds earlier, which turned into the drama in the league. Trace, you've seen both in person. How messed up are the Browns, and how messed up, and what do you make of that quarterback?
It's certainly added to the drama, right? As much interest as you could possibly have in days 2 and 3 following the Sanders saga. I kind of felt bad, though, for Dillon Gabriel a little bit, right? I mean, he certainly went higher than anybody thought that he would, but his moment in the spotlight gets overshadowed pretty quickly by the Sanders drama. I got blasted a little bit when Colorado came to UCF calling it a circus coming to town, and it still feels like a circus, right? There's some talent there for Shedeur Sanders but that's a strange quarterback room in Cleveland. And why do you take Dillon Gabriel there? Is there enough room for all of these guys, right? I mean, they got 5 quarterbacks in that room. If you count Watson there, I don't know. It's a mess. And don't they have other needs in Cleveland?
Well, they got a lot of needs.
Wins.
They got a lot of needs. And here's my thing about it. Obviously you're not on social media anymore. You've left us and abandoned us. A lot of us.
I don't miss the Twitter
I know
nonsense.
you've taken you've turned the corner, you've turned the cheek on all of us. You've and let poor Adam have to deal with all the social media stuff, like the pundit jokes every time. Like, wait, Dillon Gabriel got drafted. Like, he became the punchline because Shedeur was still not being drafted. I thought the NFL process was a joke. Shedeur is way more talented than Dillon Gabriel. He's taller, bigger, more athletic, more of a scrambler. I don't understand.
You're blaming teams because they don't want to deal with the drama that surrounds him and the attitude?
What drama?
Well, you're already hearing reports that he was not particularly cooperative during combine and other interviews.
So you rather take a quarterback that is vertically, like literally, probably can't see over the offensive line, and a guy who can't stay in one place for 1 year is not even accurate at all. Like Shedeur Sanders, the better. Are you trying to get the better player, or are you trying to get a guy that sucked? Like Dillon Gabriel clearly told the Browns, "Hey, if you need me to walk Myles Garrett's dog, I'll do it. Just draft me." That's what got him the 3rd round pick. Because otherwise, he is not an NFL talent at all, Trace, at all. And you're accepting this.
UFL, look out, Dillon Gabriel coming to a market near you. But don't you maybe, Elo, owe Dillon Gabriel a bit of an apology? Our friend Dolly _drama, the only school he says UCF, reposted on his Instagram story, by the way. Looking back, your biggest gripe, fans, is that he sold socks and gaudy NIL apparel and left for a better playbook and coaching situation. You're silly if you still hate on this kid. Agree or disagree with Dolly, Elo?
He quit on the team. Did we forget that part? Remember, there was a show, wasn't there, on ESPN Plus, where he was supposed to be back, but he chose not to be back.
He was ahead of the curve on quitting on the team, Elo.
Oh, so that's okay now. So that's okay.
I'm not saying it's okay.
Clearly, it sounds like we're just accepting it. By the way, what big games did he win at UCF? I'm waiting.
So you're not. Well, there was that Stanford game.
An under 500 Stanford team. Oh, but he did win.
So you're not ready to apologize to Dillon Gabriel. Maybe he wasn't as bad.
Bad for what? He didn't like.
How's the quarterback play been since?
Not that much. I grant you that's not been that much better, but it's not like they've won more or less than he did. Like, they won a lot of games because he had the talent he had around, but he didn't beat anybody of relevance. His best win was what? Tell me what? Marshall at the Gasparilla Bowl? Let me ask you this in all seriousness, Trace. Looking back on it, would UCF have been better off just having McKenzie for 1 more year and letting Dillon go?
Probably, but you don't know how that's going to turn out. So
you're
saying,
at the time you don't know.
As we talk about Mount Rushmore's and UCF Athletics Hall of Fame, you are not writing in Dillon Gabriel's name.
So is Dillon understanding he can't just go from, he can't go to another NFL team next year. He actually has
He's
to,
looking into the transfer portal, but the Browns said you can't do that.
Right. Like, he does realize that he's going to do. By the way, how did his career end in Oregon? Oh, that's right. Not too well, right?
He had hoped.
Oklahoma, UCLA. What else? Am I missing? Please.
All right. No apology to Dillon Gabriel.
No, we're good. Can we, you know what? He's about as relevant to UCF as the Graham brothers are to UCF in basketball. You remember those, the Graham brothers, right?
By the way, Gus Melison tweeted out, "Congratulations to RJ Harvey, Mac McWilliams." Did he say anything to Dillon Gabriel?
Who?
I don't think he did he? Yeah.
No, but I wonder what the conversations will be like with RJ and Bo Nix about Gus, since they both played. Right? That's could be interesting, right?
Yeah. Hey,
speaking of the draft, while Dillon was drafted, it was an all SEC affair. SEC dominated with an incredible numbers. Big 12, though, Trace, very distant. 31 selections. The SEC more than doubled that. Cause for concern?
No, I think it actually shows you what we have been seeing, that gap widening, right, between the SEC, the Big 10, and Big 12 ACC falling behind. And you see it in the draft selections, right? So it's just a sign of the times. There is a widening gap. That talent. What was it? What was the number? The final number was it 26 of the 32 first-round picks were either SEC and Big Ten. Was that the number?
Yeah. So now let's hold off on the Big Ten before we start saying they're equal in talent to the SEC, because a lot of those Big Ten players drafted as Ohio State players. Like, I think there was a stat where like 15% of the first 45 picks of the draft was all Ohio State players. So Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State basically take care of the Big Ten, whereas the SEC is a lot more balanced. The issue the Big 12 has, the SEC is the best conference, and the Big Ten is figuring this out, is in drafting line of scrimmage guys in the inside. The Big 12 has not been good in that, and that's hurt them a little bit. So I do think that is concerning from a perception standpoint, Trace, because it adds to some people's thoughts that the SEC and the Big Ten are on a completely different level than the ACC as well as the Big 12, which adds to this propaganda that Joe Klatt and others are making of this proposal for the playoff about trying to get the SEC and Big Ten 4 automatic bids when it expands to the tournament. That will not help your arguments.
How big do you think the gap is between the SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12 ACC? What would you say is the gap now between those top two and the next two?
I don't know if the big at the top is a gap. Like there's nobody in the Big 12 at the level of the Ohio State or even Michigan when they replenish at Penn State. But I think the Big 12 can hang with everybody else in the Big 10. The SEC, though, again, it is the most talented conference. It's got the best recruits. I think there is a gap there. I think that's been proven over the years.
All right. Well, the portal is closed. We kind of think, right? Unless we hear a name that we have not yet heard that had already entered into the portal for UCF. The big name, obviously, coming early in Dylan Risk. But as you look over the names, wide receiver Kason Stokes, for example, or tight end Elijah Brown, perhaps. Anything stand out to you where you go, that hurts UCF that they lost that guy to the portal?
No, which is very refreshing to hear, because Lord knows there's another sport at UCF that was not the case, Trace, where we did lose a lot and had to adjust to that. Whereas football, I don't think there was anybody of noteworthy that was like, whoa, look out for me. I actually think from a UCF standpoint, there's not anybody that you're like, ooh, I wish we had that guy on the roster that we have to have.
How about Waleed Flynn, the offensive lineman, inking with Georgia and struggling to crack the two deep at UCF? Doesn't seem to, on the surface, make a lot of sense, right?
But isn't he an example how we exaggerate the transfer portal? Because I remember when he came to UCF from the portal, everybody got excited, like, "Ooh, look at this guy! He's going to help the line," and he never materialized. It's kind of like recruiting in a lot of ways. We jump to conclusion with the transfer guys that come here that they're automatically going to be great. Some of them, sometimes they don't pan out, kind of like recruits. So I think he's one of them. Why is Georgia taking him? That's a great question. Maybe they need somebody that can safely drive players around.
Well, what if, as we see how the roster composition comes together, right?
Yeah.
It's early yet with Scott Frost in this turn at UCF. It's going to be interesting to see the emphasis on the high school kids, how you keep them. You know, Scott Frost talked about in his last presser of the spring camp that you're constantly trying to keep these guys on your roster. So I think it's interesting how a roster is built in this modern era of college football.
I think everybody's trying to figure it out, right? Like, I think a lot of people are still trying to sort out what's the best way to go about it and handling this roster. And hey, we've got another quarterback in the room, huh? For those concerned, we got the addition of Davey Balfour. Trace, tell us a little bit about this franchise quarterback here now to the room.
Franchise quarterback would come in late. I don't see how he has opportunity to really win that job. Wrestled away from Taven Jackson and Christian Curry Brown in the mix. Cam Fancher, we got to see a little bit of them during spring camp. A Brazilian native, South Florida. I think we talked about on Sons of UCF Live, Adam pointing out that he's been on 3 or 4 different high schools. This kid is used to moving around. It comes to UCF from Virginia Tech. If you could keep him, right, he's interesting, but I'd say if we look back on Around the Kingdom a year ago, we might have said the same thing about E.J. Colson, who's now gone from UCF to Purdue to the transfer portal again. At some point, is this good for anybody's career when they're constantly changing schools?
Probably not. To your point, you're probably right about that, but from a UCF standpoint, you lose Dylan Risk, You add a piece, so now you're back to that number 4 number. I give Mackenzie Milton credit. He said that. Didn't he say that hypothetically, I forget who asked him the question early on in the media availabilities. I'm not used to having these many media availabilities, Trace. How are you handling that? I'm like, I have a hard time keeping it up. I knew you would. But they asked Mackenzie about what if you lose a guy, right? And he's like, well, we need to get somebody else. I don't think, you knew they were going to get somebody. You got a guy that, was at Virginia Tech. So that means you got something. So I'm I'm okay from a UCF standpoint.
It's promising. They filled out the room, and he's got several years of eligibility for whatever that may mean at UCF, and he'll give it a go in the fall. Time to bring back in Adam and our silly game, Adam.
All right, gents, thanks for having me back for the silly game. It's also brought to you by our good friends at Alumni Hall. If you want to get some UCF gear, check them out at alumnihall.com/UCF, or check out the physical location, 4100 North Alafaya, right there smack dab in the corner of Alafaya University. All your gear that you might need for UCF, they have in store for you, including 2 for $38 t-shirts at all times with the great brands, including Champion. So check out alumnihall.com. Guys, with all due respect, I don't want to give you PTSD. I don't know if you know this, but these past couple of weeks at UCF have been final exams. So I don't know what your college transcripts hold for you, but I have a final exam for you because I know you two haven't studied. It's multiple choice. Don't worry. I'll take care of you. So Elo, the first question is for you. You had the first crack at this, and Trace, you will answer the same question as well. Here's the question. Scott Frost's best move since being hired at UCF is A, signing Taven Jackson, B, hiring Mackenzie Milton, C, lowering expectations for wins, or D, revamping strength and conditioning? Elo.
I'm going to go C. Oh, he likes it. Thank you. Lowering the expectations. That's what I'm going to go with because it gives you time to figure out what you have. You don't know what you have. That buys you some time, and it controls the narrative a little bit and doesn't get people overly excited. I think it's C.
All right, Trace, pencils down. What's your answer?
I've got a pencil here. I was thinking you might need a Scantron situation there. D, strength and conditioning. He said he didn't say this team was soft, but it needed to be tougher. And Zach Duvall coming back to UCF, I think that they're well on their way to being tougher, and we may see those dividends pay off in the fall. So D.
All right, question 2 starts with you, Trace Trylko. The biggest individual story over the last semester, so January to now, the last semester, as you two would know, the biggest story is A, Darius Johnson's Crown Tournament run, B, RJ Harvey, a second-round draft pick, C, Dylan Risk's transfer, or D, Mustafa Cham's transfer?
I think the drama surrounding Mustafa Cham, I think that was a piece that UCF would have benefited from as they lose everybody on the roster, and some drama surrounding him going to a Big 12 team, the foe of Cincinnati, for reported $2 million, nearly UCF's NIL budget in total. I think that is the biggest story.
All right, Elo, no looking at your neighbor's paper. What is your answer?
First of all, $2 million. Isn't that what you get when you go on PTO, Trace? $2 million?
Yeah, I wish.
I was going to take Trace's answer there, but since he took it first, I'm going to go a different way. I'm going to go RJ Harvey, second round. We're a football school at the end of the day. I think a lot of people generally were curious and interested and invested in RJ Harvey, and they're going to be following him in Denver. So I'm going to say him.
All right, last question on this exam. Elo, starts with you. We know we've learned a lot this last semester. So the question is, the team that has the best outlook heading into next season: A, men's basketball, B, football, C, softball, or D, volleyball? Which team, Elo, has the best outlook heading into next season?
This is a gimme question.
Really? Hello, softball, my friend. We're about to go to a 5th straight regional, RPI 29, with a young team. Good nucleus. Who knows who comes back and who might leave, but you've got a core with Sidney Ball Malone, which is probably the safest bet. If you had a bet on a coach on a team right now, hey, who's going to be good consistently? It's been softball right now. That's easy.
Bit of an open book test on that one. Elo, we open book test for Elo. Trace, what do you got?
Probably the program right on campus that has transitioned the best into the Big 12. They built themselves a roster going into the Big 12, scheduled tough and we're prepared for the Big 12. Got to go with softball. Too much uncertainty with volleyball, new coach coming in. Basketball is a complete rebuild, and we just talked about lowered expectations for football. We'll see what Scott Frost and crew can deliver, but certainly softball.
The Matt Botsford slander is unridiculous around here.
Thank you, Adam. All right, Elo, spring camp over. Had an opportunity now to see who's entered the portal. UCF starting to bring some names in. What do you identify biggest need on offense that you think Scott Frost and staff are working to fill?
Talented players. Can we bring some more? Please find who are the talented guys. That's the obviously inside joke, but I will say they need to bring some receivers depth-wise. Who is going to be the receivers on this team, Trace? That is my question. You could talk about, well, we like this guy sort of and this, but we don't know anything about this receiving corps. It's the most unknown wide receiving corps that I can remember at UCF. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and, there's some angst in Night Nation when they lose Day Farmer to injury during spring camp. Of course, he never played for UCF, but it shows you the uncertainty at the position when you're concerned because you're losing a piece there. But I continue to say offensive line. I think they may have a starting five, but do they have the Big 12 depth that they need? And I'm not sure that they do, Elo. What about defense for you? What's the biggest area of need?
I think it's linebackers. How many times have we said since this show started linebacker needs, and it's still, has it been resolved? I don't know. That's a big question that I have.
I'm going to continue to double down on defensive line. Again, I think there are some pieces there, but do they have Big 12 depth? And I share your concern on on the linebackers. Is it possible in Scott Frost's return, Elo, that it's the defense, though, that may be the stronger unit of the two?
Maybe, possibly there. But, we'll see about the defensive line and the offensive line. Right? This is what happens. I'm not around. Kyle Nash fills in, and now you're talking line play. What the heck?
Beef along the lines.
Right. But we'll see. The trenches. But, yeah, I think the defense probably is ahead of the offense right now because we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. And that starts there. Until we have a better idea of the quarterback and the receivers, you're right. The defense probably is going to be defense and then the running game. Still think might be the calling card for UCF early on. What
it really is, Elo, is you're not sure about any position, and you have concerns and questions about every position.
Well said. Well said, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, big news. Shaquille O'Neal has been named the Sacramento State's general manager. Is this something that UCF should have done or should do, Trace?
Well, we talk so much about Moneyball, Elo, and I'm not a fan of gimmicks. Right, for the guy who walks and talks every week as a promotion for Sons of UCF Live. I'm not supportive of gimmicks, Elo, but if you're not going to win Moneyball, then maybe you got to get creative. I give Sacramento State credit for the Shaquille O'Neal signing there as a general manager, volunteer GM. Already inking former UCF Knight Mikey Williams in the transfer portal to Sacramento State, also recruiting his son there. I think it's interesting. Who could serve, though, as a GM at a UCF?
I think that's the problem. You look at some of the other places, like Oklahoma had Trey Young, for example. You know what these guys have in common? Money. That's what they have. They can recruit players' money. Who's going to do that for UCF right now? That's the problem. We need Taylor Hendricks to get healthy and then have a great NBA career so he might become a future GM. Otherwise, that's part of the problem. It's not so simple there. Unless are you volunteering, Trace? You should be. No, Adam Eaton should leave Suns Live and
take a pay cut to go work for UCF.
I'm not even.
I'm just saying, you got to win Moneyball. You got to be very good. You got to thread the needle. You got to be right on these guys. And basketball took some big chances, and certainly off the court stuff didn't seem to resurface to any major extent. But you got to win that way, or you got to get very creative. And if not a general manager, you're going to have to do something else that breaks through. And I would say, at least in this news cycle, Sacramento State wins the day. UCF Baseball, Elo, takes 2 out of 3 last weekend against TCU, a top 20 ranked team. In comes West Virginia, a top 20 ranked team, top 10th, right? And they get swept. I mean, this is a 6-15 team in league play. They win a midweek against North Florida. Who cares? The games that matter are Big 12 games. They were 14-15 a year ago in the Big 12, their first. They're going to have to win out to get to 500. That's not going to happen.
they got to worry about just making the Big 12 tournament. 12 of the 14 teams make it. 2 will not. They're right now in that mix with BYU, Utah, and Houston. 2 of those
They're on the bubble, Elo.
For the Big 12 tournament bubble. That is correct. The bullpen's not good enough, Trace. The bullpen's not been good enough this year. I think they really miss guys like Kyle Kramer and Santala and Nijay Victor last year. Some good arms they had in the back end of the bullpen, especially guys like Kramer that was reliable. They don't have that this year. Their offense is good, but up and down. They leave a lot of runners on base.
36 guys left on base, Elo, in the 3-game series against West Virginia.
Right, that's not going to cut it in the Big 12. And West Virginia is really good. By the way, Trace, as I mentioned on a previous Around the Kingdom episode, I'm pretty sure we'll look at the play. Adam can look it up down the road. West Virginia owns UCF in every sport that they play. They're our new Tulsa. We can't beat them in soccer, can't beat them in hoops, can't beat them in baseball. My goodness, can we just not play West Virginia? That's what I'm happy about. My sport doesn't have West Virginia doesn't play softball. Let's keep it that way. But they got at least their starters are starting to figure some guys out, but it might be too little, too late. But they got to get deeper into the ball games and then not leave so many runners on.
At Oklahoma State for the weekend, Elo shift gears. Softball, though, a little bit stronger situation.
Softball wins a series against Houston. They go 3-1 in the week. They're 29 in the RPI going into this week. They finished the regular season at Kansas. They're about the 8th spot in the Big 12 tournament. But the 29 RPI is the most important stat there, Trace. I think the Houston series basically locks up an NCAA tournament bid for UCF, which for the 5th year in a row, which I think is impressive considering the youth of this team. It's basically a rebuild, and they're going to make the regionals. And really, it's a team that has done it with the 5th toughest non-conference schedule in the sport. That's unbelievable. 12th overall. I've said this at other platforms. I think if I'm a UCF coach on campus, I would go to the Sydney Ball Malone class on how to schedule, because the way she schedules gives her team many opportunities to make the tournament or even host. And you can do that now in the Big 12. I think if this team didn't lose some of the games like Iowa State in that, they might be in the mix to conversation. But I got to give character a high grade for UCF. 11-0 deficit last week at Stetson, comes all the way back. There were 6 outs away from being run ruled. Unbelievable. 8 home runs in the game, 14-13. Here's my hot take here. That is the greatest comeback any UCF team has ever had in an individual game in any sport, Trace. Imagine a football team as UCF. Imagine if UCF was down 35-0 in the second half, in the fourth quarter, and come all the way back, or if basketball was down 30. That's what softball equivalent did.
I think we've seen the reverse of that scenario. Elo, it would have been nice if you'd have had that call on that one. Softball at Kansas. Props last week. I probably set the number wrong on this, Elo. I'm not as good at you at the props. I set it at 2.5. It should have probably been 1.5. Guys drafted both. Kyle and I went with the under. 2 was the number. I thought it would only be RJ Harvey. I didn't look highly upon Mac McWilliams. What do you got for a prop this week, Elo?
All right. Let's do baseball softball. Last regular season weekend, at least both are playing regular season games, okay? We're going to pick a baseball and a softball player for each series. Hits. We're going to do hits plus runs batted in plus home runs total. Okay? Pick one player.
Are we involving Adam? I'm going to channel it for Adam. Stormy. I'm going with
Stormy. The seniors had a great weekend. That's your pick.
I'm going to go with Stormy as my softball.
Pick here? Is Adam gets to pick?
We'll bring him in.
We'll let him pick at the end. All right. I will go Sierra Humphreys. You will go Stormy. How about baseball?
Williamson.
He's really good. That's a great pick. I'll go with Espinal. Edion Espinal.
Yeah, he's still strong. All right, we'll watch for that. What was it? Hits and RBIs, right? All right,
hits and RBIs. Let's just do hits and RBIs combined.
There we go. All right, time to bring back in Adam. What did we get right? What did we get wrong?
All right, here we go. We talk about NFL drafts. RJ Harvey, the 8th highest UCF player ever drafted, behind Blake Bortles, Dante Culpepper, Terrell Troop, by the way, Brett Perryman, Mike Hughes, Tristan Hill, and Richie Grant. Dillon Gabriel is 5'11". Kyler Murray's 5'10", just for context for everybody out there. I did check Gus Melison's Twitter. There was no tweet about Dillon Gabriel. Sorry about that, Dylan. Elo, I think you said Walt Claire Flynn was a portal guy. He was actually a high school recruit. You talked about Davy Belfort. According to 24/7, they listed him at being at 4 schools: Cardinal Newman, Dillard, Gulliver Prep, and Western. If you know South Florida, there could not be 4 more different schools than those 4 schools right there. You talk about Shaquille O'Neal being a GM. He's not a Sac State alum, so maybe UCF needs to go outside the alum tree if they want to. They want some sort of a GM there. Mike Bibby is their head coach, and West Virginia is ranked number 16 right now in D1 baseball.
All right. Thank you, Adam. One more thing before we go. Elo, UCF's a tennis school. For just the second time in program history, men's tennis hosts the first and second rounds of the NCAA tournament. The 14th ranked Knights welcome the Cows, the Gators, the Hurricanes at the USTA National Campus in Orlando. Not to be outdone, Elo, women's tennis, the Big 12 regular season champs earned their 10th NCAA bid in program history, traveling to Raleigh, opening with Furman on May 1. Look for new episodes midweek, every week on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Wherever you get that downloadable audio content, you'll also find Around the Kingdom Overtime. For Eric Lopez and Adam Eaton, I'm Trace Trylko. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this week's Around the Kingdom.